Welcome to my channel. Before you continue watching, I want you to imagine something that may feel impossible today. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the person you have been waiting to become has been hiding behind your own habits, fears, and excuses all along. Imagine walking into a room without wondering whether people will judge you. Imagine speaking without rehearsing every sentence inside your head, listening without feeling the need to impress anyone, and looking into the mirror without secretly wishing you were someone else. Now, here is the question that could change everything. What if the personality you think you were born with is not your final personality at all? What if the shy version of you, the insecure version, the angry version, the negative version, or the person who constantly seeks approval is simply a collection of habits repeated so many times that you started calling them your identity? Stay until the end, because the story of a young man named Noah will reveal something most people discover far too late. Becoming confident is not about changing into another person. It is about uncovering the strongest version of yourself that has been waiting beneath years of fear. Noah lived in a crowded city where thousands of people passed each other every day, yet he often felt completely invisible. He worked in a small office, completed his responsibilities, returned home, and repeated the same routine. Nobody considered him a bad person. In fact, everyone thought he was polite, hardworking, and dependable. But Noah carried a secret frustration that he never shared with anyone. He wanted to become more confident, more interesting, more expressive, and more comfortable around people, but every attempt ended with the same conclusion. This is just who I am. He believed some people were naturally charismatic, while others were destined to remain quiet. He watched colleagues speak confidently during meetings and wondered how they could express opinions without worrying about mistakes. He watched strangers make friends easily and wondered why every conversation felt like an examination to him. Even when someone complimented him, Noah immediately searched for a reason to reject it. If someone said he looked good, he thought they were being polite. If someone praised his work, he assumed they were exaggerating. His mind had become an expert at destroying every positive thought before it could take root. One evening, Noah attended an important family gathering. The room was filled with laughter, conversations, and people sharing stories. He stood near the corner, holding a glass of water, waiting for the evening to end. Several times he wanted to join a conversation, but each time his mind whispered, "What if they think you are boring? What if you say something stupid? What if nobody cares?" So he remained silent. On the journey home, he felt angry with himself, not because anyone had insulted him, but because he had once again abandoned his own voice. When he reached his apartment, he walked directly to the mirror and stared at his reflection. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he asked himself a question he had avoided for years. If I keep living exactly like this, who will I become 5 years from now? The question frightened him more than any social situation ever had. He imagined himself older but unchanged, still waiting for confidence, still avoiding opportunities, still blaming his personality for decisions he was making every day. That night, Noah opened a blank notebook and wrote one sentence: "I will not spend my entire life waiting to become ready." The next morning, he began with something almost invisible. Before checking his phone, he stood in front of the mirror and corrected his posture. He lifted his shoulders, raised his head, and looked directly into his own eyes. It felt uncomfortable, almost foolish, but he stayed there. Then he said, "I am allowed to take up space." He did not completely believe the words, but he repeated them anyway. He soon realized that confidence does not always begin with belief. Sometimes it begins with behavior. You act before you feel ready, and eventually your mind learns from your actions. Noah decided that every day he would practice one small behavior that the confident version of himself would naturally do. On Monday, he greeted a coworker first. On Tuesday, he asked a question during a meeting. On Wednesday, he gave someone a genuine compliment without worrying about the response. On Thursday, he joined a conversation instead of waiting for someone to invite him. None of these moments changed his life instantly, but each one weakened the fear that had controlled him. Then came Friday, when Noah discovered that the real battle was not learning how to speak. It was learning how to listen. During lunch, a coworker began sharing a personal problem. Noah almost interrupted with advice, but stopped himself. Instead, he listened carefully, maintained eye contact, and asked thoughtful questions. When the conversation ended, the coworker thanked him and said, "I feel better just because someone actually listened." Noah walked away stunned. He had spent years believing that an impressive personality required entertaining stories and clever words. Now he was discovering something far more powerful. People remember how you make them feel, and sometimes the person with the strongest presence is not the loudest person in the room, but the one who makes everyone around them feel seen, respected, and understood. Yet, Noah's journey was only beginning, because the moment he started changing himself, life was about to place him in situations where his old habits would fight desperately to survive. The following Monday, Noah arrived at work determined to continue his experiment. He had discovered that becoming confident was not a single transformation, but a collection of tiny decisions repeated until they became natural. Still, he quickly learned that changing yourself becomes difficult when the people around you continue expecting the old version of you. During the morning meeting, his manager asked everyone to share an idea for improving the company's next project. Normally, Noah would have remained silent, hoping someone else would speak first. This time, he felt his heart beating faster, but he raised his hand. His voice was slightly shaky as he explained his suggestion. For a few seconds, nobody responded. Noah immediately felt the familiar fear returning. His mind began whispering that everyone thought his idea was foolish. Then his manager nodded and said, "That's actually a useful direction. Can you explain it further?" Noah continued speaking. By the end of the meeting, his idea had become part of the team's discussion. Walking back to his desk, he realized something important. The fear had been real, but the danger had not. Most of the disasters he imagined existed only inside his mind. That evening, Noah wrote another sentence in his notebook. Fear is a feeling, not a prediction. He started repeating it whenever anxiety appeared. Slowly, he became more willing to act before feeling completely comfortable. But as his confidence grew, he discovered another challenge that many people overlook. Confidence without self awareness can easily become arrogance. Noah did not want to replace insecurity with the need to prove himself. He wanted to become someone who was comfortable enough with himself that he no longer needed constant approval. So he began studying the difference between confidence and ego. He noticed that insecure people often talk too much because they are afraid of being ignored. Confident people can speak, but they can also remain silent without feeling invisible. Insecure people interrupt because they want to control the conversation. Confident people listen because they are not afraid that someone else's voice will make theirs less valuable. Insecure people become defensive when corrected. Confident people can say, "I was wrong," without feeling that their entire identity has collapsed. Noah decided that his goal was not to become the most impressive person in every room. His goal was to become the most genuine version of himself. This decision changed the way he communicated. When he did not know something, he admitted it. When someone had a better idea, he acknowledged it. When he made a mistake, he apologized instead of creating excuses. He discovered that honesty made him feel lighter because he no longer had to protect a false image of perfection. Yet, there was another area of his personality he needed to confront: emotional control. Noah had always considered himself calm, but he realized that he was actually avoiding difficult emotions rather than managing them. Whenever someone criticized him, he either became defensive or remained silent while feeling angry inside. Whenever something went wrong, he immediately blamed circumstances or other people. One afternoon, his manager criticized a mistake Noah had made on an important report. This decision changed the way he communicated. When he did not know something, he admitted it. When someone had a better idea, he acknowledged it. When he made a mistake, he apologized instead of creating excuses. He discovered that honesty made him feel lighter because he no longer had to protect a false image of perfection. Yet, there was another area of his personality he needed to confront: emotional control. Noah had always considered himself calm, but he realized that he was actually avoiding difficult emotions rather than managing them. Whenever someone criticized him, he either became defensive or remained silent while feeling angry inside. Whenever something went wrong, he immediately blamed circumstances or other people. One afternoon, his manager criticized a mistake Noah had made on an important report. The words were sharper than necessary, and Noah felt anger rise inside him. His first instinct was to defend himself. He wanted to explain every detail and prove that the mistake was not entirely his fault. But instead of reacting immediately, he paused. He took one slow breath and asked, "What should I do differently next time?" The manager explained the problem, and Noah listened. Later, he realized that emotional strength did not mean never feeling anger. It meant refusing to let anger make decisions for you. From that day forward, he practiced the pause. When someone upset him, he waited before responding. When he felt offended, he asked whether the situation truly deserved his energy. When criticism arrived, he searched for the useful lesson hidden inside it. This did not make him weak, it made him harder to manipulate. He could remain respectful without becoming passive and firm, without becoming aggressive. His personality began to develop a calm strength that people naturally respected. Noah also started paying attention to something he had previously ignored: body language. He noticed that his physical habits often communicated insecurity before he even spoke. He avoided eye contact, crossed his arms, lowered his head, and rushed through sentences. So he began practicing simple changes. He stood upright, relaxed his shoulders, maintained comfortable eye contact, and slowed his speech. He did not try to look powerful, he simply tried to look present. The difference was remarkable. People responded to him differently, but more importantly, he began feeling differently about himself. His external behavior was teaching his internal mind a new story. He was showing himself that he belonged in the room. Alongside these changes, Noah improved his personal habits. He started sleeping at consistent times, exercising several days each week, keeping his clothes clean and organized, and taking better care of his appearance. He realized that personal care was not vanity. It was a form of self-respect. When he looked after his body, his mind felt clearer. When he organized his surroundings, he felt more in control. When he dressed intentionally, he felt prepared to face the day. Yet the greatest transformation happened inside his thoughts. Noah began noticing how cruelly he spoke to himself. Every mistake had once become evidence that he was a failure. Now he challenged that voice. Instead of saying, I am terrible at this, he said, I am still learning. Instead of saying, everyone is better than me, he asked, what can I learn from them? Instead of saying, I will never change, he reminded himself of every small change he had already made. Gradually, he understood that the voice inside your head becomes the foundation of the personality you show the world. If you constantly tell yourself that you are weak, you will behave cautiously. If you constantly tell yourself that you are incapable, you will avoid opportunities. But if you teach yourself to think with patience, courage, and honesty, your behavior begins to change. Noah was becoming a different person, but he still had one final lesson to learn. Real confidence would be tested not when everything went smoothly, but when life suddenly went completely wrong. The test arrived on a morning when Noah least expected it. He had spent months building better habits, improving his communication, controlling his reactions, and learning to respect himself. But life had not promised to reward him with an easy future. That morning, his manager called him into a private office and delivered unexpected news. The company was restructuring, and Noah's position was being eliminated. For a moment, the room seemed to become completely silent. The old Noah would have immediately believed this was proof that nothing ever worked for him. He would have searched for someone to blame, questioned his abilities, and imagined the worst possible future. The new Noah felt the same fear, but he responded differently. He asked questions. He listened carefully. He requested feedback about his work and thanked his manager for being honest. When he walked out of the office, his hands were shaking, but he refused to panic. He sat on a bench outside the building and took several slow breaths. Losing his job was painful, but he realized that one event did not have the power to define his entire identity. His position had disappeared. His abilities had not. His routine had changed. His potential had not. His circumstances had become uncertain. His character was still his own. That afternoon, Noah opened his notebook and wrote, a setback can change my direction without deciding my destination. He then did something he would never have done a year earlier. He called 3 people he respected and asked for advice. He did not pretend to have everything under control. He admitted that he was uncertain and needed guidance. Each conversation gave him something valuable. One person offered practical advice. Another introduced him to a professional contact. The third reminded him that rejection and uncertainty were normal parts of every meaningful journey. Noah realized that asking for help was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign that he valued growth more than pride. Over the next several weeks, he applied for new positions, improved his skills, and continued his daily habits. Some applications were rejected. Some interviews went badly. One company never responded at all. Yet something remarkable had changed. Rejection no longer felt like a verdict on his identity. He began treating it as information. If an interview exposed a weakness, he worked on it. If he lacked knowledge for a position, he studied. If his communication needed improvement, he practiced. He stopped asking, why don't they want me? And started asking, what can I improve before the next opportunity? This shift protected his confidence during a difficult season. One evening, Noah attended a community event where he met a successful entrepreneur named Elias. They spoke for nearly an hour, and Noah was surprised by how naturally the conversation developed. Before leaving, Elias said something that stayed with him. You have something many talented people never develop, he said. You are comfortable enough to admit what you don't know. Noah thanked him, but later wondered why those words mattered so much. He realized that his personality had become stronger because he no longer felt the need to perform. He could be intelligent without pretending to know everything. He could be confident without dominating conversations. He could be ambitious without looking down on others. He could be kind without allowing people to take advantage of him. He could disagree without becoming disrespectful. He had finally learned that maturity is not about controlling other people. It is about controlling yourself. A few months later, Noah received an opportunity to lead a project for a growing company. The position required communication, decision making, emotional intelligence, and the ability to work with people from different backgrounds. The old Noah would have rejected the opportunity because he would have focused on everything he could not do. The new Noah accepted it because he understood that confidence grows when you step beyond your comfort zone. The project was difficult from the beginning. Team members disagreed. Deadlines were missed. Mistakes happened. At times, Noah felt overwhelmed, but instead of trying to control everyone, he focused on creating trust. He listened to each person's concerns. He gave credit when others performed well. When something went wrong, he accepted responsibility for his part. When someone made a mistake, he corrected the problem without humiliating the person. Slowly, the team became stronger. People began approaching Noah with problems because they trusted that he would listen before judging. They respected him not because he had all the answers, but because he created an environment where everyone felt safe enough to contribute. One evening, after a long day, a team member told Noah, "You have changed more than I have ever seen anyone change. A year ago, you barely spoke in meetings. Now people look to you when things become difficult." Noah smiled because he knew the truth. He had not suddenly become fearless. He had simply practiced courage until courage became familiar. He had not magically developed a powerful personality. He had developed habits that allowed his natural strengths to appear. The experience taught him another important lesson. Your personality is not only about how you present yourself when life is easy, it is revealed by how you treat people when you are stressed, how you respond when you are criticized, how you behave when nobody can reward you, and how you handle success when everyone is watching. Noah decided that from that point forward, he would measure his growth by his character rather than his popularity. He would ask himself difficult questions. Was he becoming more patient? Was he listening better? Was he keeping his promises? Was he treating people with respect? Was he learning from criticism? Was he taking responsibility for his choices? Was he becoming someone he could trust? These questions became more important than whether everyone liked him. Slowly, Noah discovered that the strongest form of confidence is self-trust. When you trust yourself to handle difficult conversations, you become less afraid of them. When you trust yourself to recover from failure, rejection becomes less frightening. When you trust yourself to make mistakes and learn, perfection stops controlling you. And when you trust yourself to walk away from people who disrespect your values, loneliness no longer feels like a threat. Noah had spent years trying to become impressive in the eyes of others. Now he was becoming dependable in his own eyes. And that was a transformation far more powerful than he had ever imagined. But the final test of his journey would not come from a job, a presentation, or a difficult conversation. It would come from someone who knew exactly who Noah used to be, someone who would challenge the new identity he had spent so long building. The person waiting for Noah after the project ended was Daniel, an old friend who had known him before the transformation began. Daniel remembered the quiet man who avoided attention, apologized for his opinions, and constantly searched for approval. When they met again, Daniel looked at Noah and laughed. I heard you are some kind of leader now, he said jokingly. What happened to the guy who used to hide in the corner? For a brief moment, Noah felt the old insecurity return. He could have become defensive. He could have tried to prove how much he had changed. Instead, he smiled. He is still part of me, Noah replied. I just stopped letting him make every decision. Daniel became quiet, and Noah realized how powerful that sentence was. He had not destroyed his old personality. He had learned to understand it. He still felt nervous sometimes. He still had moments of self-doubt. He still worried about what people thought. The difference was that those feelings no longer controlled his choices. Noah had finally learned that personal growth does not mean becoming a completely different person. It means becoming the person who can guide your thoughts, emotions, habits, and actions instead of allowing them to guide you. Daniel asked Noah how he had changed so dramatically. Noah thought for a moment before answering. I stopped waiting for confidence, he said. I started practicing the behaviors of the person I wanted to become. I learned to listen. I learned to pause before reacting. I learned to take care of myself. I learned to accept criticism without turning it into self-hatred. I learned to say no when necessary. I learned that kindness and confidence can exist together. Most importantly, I learned that I don't need everyone to approve of me. Daniel looked genuinely surprised. That sounds simple, he said. Noah smiled. It is simple, but simple does not mean easy. That sentence stayed with Daniel long after they said goodbye. Years later, Noah became known as someone people trusted. He was not the loudest person in every room. He was not always the funniest or most charismatic. But when Noah entered a room, people felt comfortable. He greeted others warmly. He remembered names. He listened carefully. He asked questions because he was genuinely interested. When someone succeeded, he celebrated them. When someone failed, he encouraged them. When someone criticized him, he considered the lesson before deciding whether the criticism was useful. When conflict appeared, he searched for solutions instead of enemies. His personality had become powerful not because he had learned how to impress people, but because he had learned how to respect them. One afternoon, Noah returned to the small apartment where his journey had begun. The place had changed very little. The same mirror still stood against the wall. He walked toward it and looked at his reflection. For a moment, he remembered that difficult night when he had asked himself who he would become if nothing changed. Now he knew the answer. He had become someone who trusted himself, someone who could walk into uncertainty without immediately running away, someone who could speak without needing every word to be perfect, someone who could listen without feeling invisible. Someone who could accept rejection without believing he was worthless. Someone who could control his emotions without denying them. Someone who could care about his appearance without becoming obsessed with other people's opinions. Someone who could learn from others without feeling smaller. Someone who could stand alone without feeling lonely. Noah realized that the most important transformation had happened in the quietest moments when nobody was watching. It happened when he chose to read instead of waste another hour. It happened when he apologized even though his pride wanted to remain silent. It happened when he walked away from an argument instead of saying something cruel. It happened when he exercised despite having no motivation. It happened when he listened to someone who needed support. It happened when he looked in the mirror and refused to insult himself. It happened every time he kept a promise to himself. That was the secret. A powerful personality is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built through repeated evidence that you can trust yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, your confidence grows. Every time you face something you fear, your courage grows. Every time you learn from a mistake, your wisdom grows. Every time you treat someone with kindness, your character grows. Every time you control an emotional reaction, your maturity grows. And eventually, all those small improvements combine into a person you no longer recognize from your past. Noah understood that everyone has the ability to begin again. You may be shy today, but that does not mean you must remain shy forever. You may struggle to communicate, but communication can be practiced. You may react emotionally, but emotional control can be learned. You may lack confidence, but self trust can be built. You may have spent years seeking approval, but you can begin choosing self respect today. The person you are right now is not a finished product. You are still becoming. So, if you want to improve your personality, start small. Speak a little more clearly. Listen a little more carefully. Stand a little taller. Read something that expands your mind. Take care of your body. Keep your promises. Control your reactions. Stop insulting yourself for being imperfect. Learn to apologize without humiliation and accept compliments without suspicion. Choose friends who encourage your growth. Protect your peace without becoming cold. Be kind without becoming weak. Be confident without becoming arrogant. And remember that you do not need to become the most popular person in the world. You only need to become someone whose presence brings value wherever they go, someone who makes conversations better, someone who makes people feel respected, someone who can remain calm when others panic, someone who can admit mistakes without losing dignity, someone who can celebrate another person's success without feeling threatened, someone who can walk away from negativity without carrying it into the future. If you begin today, the transformation may feel invisible at first. Nobody may notice your first small step. You may still feel nervous during your first conversation. You may still make mistakes. You may still experience rejection. But keep going. One day, you will look back and realize that the person you once wished you could become was being created through every small decision you made when nobody was watching. Your personality is not your prison. Your past is not your identity. Your fears are not your destiny. You are not required to remain the person you became simply because other people have become comfortable with that version of you. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to become stronger, wiser, calmer, kinder, and more confident. And perhaps the most powerful lesson Noah discovered was this: the goal is not to become someone who never feels afraid. The goal is to become someone who refuses to let fear decide the direction of their life. So, tomorrow morning, stand in front of the mirror and remember the question that changed Noah's life. What kind of person do I want to be today? Then choose one action that matches your answer. Do it again the next day, then again, because your future personality is being built right now through the thoughts you repeat, the habits you practice, the people you respect, the boundaries you create, the emotions you control, and the decisions you make when nobody is watching. You do not have to transform your entire life overnight. You only have to take the next right step. And if you keep taking those steps, one day you will look into the mirror and realize something extraordinary. You were never waiting to become someone else. You were waiting to finally become yourself.